look at a SOC analyst role or any cybersecurity role, any role on LinkedIn, and there's going to be 200 applicants within 24 hours. And it's kind of where the system is broken, because there's a lot of people that are just falling through the cracks in that, and it doesn't tell a story.
Welcome back. CyberSpace. Empirical training. Do you know what I mean? So they're like empirical training. Welcome back.
Hello and welcome back to the CyberSpace podcast by Empirical Training. It's another great one today. We've actually got a special guest, kind of outside of security, or at least the security profession, so to speak. We've got James Gallen with us, who is going to take us through what it takes to get a job in cybersecurity. Because James, your background is in recruiting, right? That's the expertise you're bringing to the table for us. Yeah,
so I help a lot of companies build out their security teams, especially within the SOC. So I've helped everybody sort of a lot of people break into cyber. I've got a good look. I like to think I've got a good insight into what managers are looking for then as well.
Definitely. Do you have any stats of how many people you've placed or how many SOCs you've built?
I don't actually off the top of my head, but not in.
You haven't got any notches on the old bedpost. Tick them off. That's another one.
No, there's a lot recently. We've been helping a lot of MSSPs build out their SOC teams in as well, and that's been really exciting. And then a very major retailer, I helped them build out their whole cyber defense team. So that was really exciting work then as well. Nice. But no, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you how many I've built out.
Oh, that's okay. But that sounds like too many to count then, which is great to have your experience on the call. And my name's Josh. For our listeners, you're probably used to my voice by now. I'm the usual host, one of the empirical trainers, former security analyst, former threat hunter, current product specialist with a large security company. And I'm joined with my colleague, Robbie, who's actually going to do probably a little bit more of my role today, which I'm looking forward to. But Robbie, for those who need a refresher, who are you?
I'm Robbie Steele. I've been in cybersecurity for about 8.5 years, 8.5, I think. I don't know who's counting. But yeah, MSSP, SOC, security analyst, manager, SOC consultant, helping out sales at the moment. I'm a TikToker now. I don't do dances. Yeah, nice to be here, man. Nice to have a little guest, James, on the pod. Love a little guest episode. Thank you for joining.
No worries.
So do you two know each other? Is that because I heard you talk about you're a SOC leader. James talked about building out SOCs. Is that where this relationship flourished?
I've just known James for a number of years now. I can't remember how long we've been speaking for, but you know, I'm the top networker on LinkedIn. So yeah, we've been pals for quite a long time, and you've placed quite a lot of the people that I've previously worked with. And yeah, just a good connection to have along the journey.
Yeah, it's been really, really, really useful for me to have someone like Robbie that can help me sort of understand the SOC environment a lot better. Always get a nice wee referral from Robbie as well. And like I said, I've helped a lot of his friends go into new roles, and yeah, some really, really great people that have been referred to me by Robbie. So it's been a really good relationship to have, which is invaluable in the world of recruitment as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And James was mentioning before, we're not going to mention any names, but one of my close friends, he's just placed into a role for over 6 figures, working out in dollars. So yeah, really big wage, really cool company, cool opportunities. And yeah, it pays to be busy on LinkedIn. We've always harped on over the duration of these podcasts and in our content, but you know, build out your LinkedIn profile, get busy, post about your journey, post about your wins, post about your losses, connect with people, say hello. You don't have to even ask anything of people when you're connecting. You can just say thank you for connecting, then that's it, and then just leave it dormant for a bit, and then when you need something, then you can reach out. Or yeah, it does pay to be busy and to get your name out there on LinkedIn, because it is the most professional social media network, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And there's so many simple ways about just creating content on LinkedIn. So from an aspect of obviously working within cybersecurity, I'm not a cybersecurity professional, but I still want to be seen to be involved in the market and involved in what's going on in the world within cyber. And so it's just as much important for me to get my name out there. So there's been loads of little tricks that I've picked up along the way. One of them actually is so simple, is I'm signed up for Google Alerts. And so everything that's SOC related, threat hunting, anything that comes through that's threat intelligence, I've set up all these keywords, and every morning 6 a.m. I get an email through, and it will hit me with all these topics, and I can just pick one, write what I think about it, and then sort of release it out. And it will just constantly let people know that you're engaged in what's going on in the cyber world. And it's a really, really easy way to get content out there then as well. It takes about 10 minutes, but you're always sort of showing people your journey and what interests you then as well. So that's a really, really top tip that I tell a lot of people who are trying to break in, when it's always really scary to try and start putting out those posts, and nobody really wants to put out too much of a thought piece if you're quite new. Nobody wants to be wrong in that sense. So just reposting out articles that you find that were really interesting with a little blurb about what you find interesting about it is more than enough to start getting all that content out there and start building your profile out then as well.
Yeah, that's a great trick. I've never thought of that, the Google Alerts. And that is a big blocker for people, is ideas, but then also quality as well. People think that if they're going to post something, then it has to be valuable, or people have to find some form of value in the post. Otherwise, they're going to get shunned from LinkedIn forever. But that's not really the case. You can post and just move on, sort of thing.
You talk about that in the case of like entry level people as well, like who kind of just getting into this. What have I got that's going to be of any worth to say out there? But I've been in this industry for a while, and I do the word that I hate, thought leadership pieces for my company, whether that's a conference or whether that's posts or whatever. And I still have that problem right now, where I think, hey, do I really have anything valuable to contribute here? Or is this just a kind of interesting article and I can talk about some of the same stuff that keeps on coming up? So I think, I battle with that. I'm not a very consistent poster for that very reason, that sometimes I like to be forced to do something and kind of go and proactively do it. So do you have any advice for how someone can kind of ramp up their engagement, or is there any real consequence to not doing a good post, or is people just going to scroll by and not think anything of it?
To be honest, it was something that I really struggle with, and I'm not the most consistent. I was really, really consistent right at the start of whenever I was trying to build out what my profile looks like. I'm not going to lie, probably with a little bit of time working in the industry, I've probably started doing it a little bit less. But in all honesty, there's no real bad posts out there. There's a lot of people who would like to think that they're thought leaders. There's a lot of people who like to think that they're cyber influencers, but you don't really need to worry about those people. I think the main thing is talking about your story, talking about what interests you, so that whenever someone does click on your profile, it's really, really clear to them that you're a hobbyist within cyber as well. Because with lack of experience, what you have to tell is your story. And that is going to be the big thing that's going to get you your next role in as well. So it's just showing how you're engaged with the community. It's showing what events you're going to. It's all of that stuff, because that's what's going to sort of beat that blocker of not having the experience, is being able to show your tenacity and how much you're engaged and how much you really actually are a hobbyist within cyber then as well.
Yeah, people love an underdog, but then with that comes a level of vulnerability, doesn't it? You sort of have to open up a little bit and share where you're currently at, and that can be rather daunting for some people. But I wanted to touch on certifications, because you actually have some security certifications, don't you?
Yeah, so I've got my CSMP and ISO 27001 foundation. I tried to do my Sec Plus, but that was a push too far, I think, for someone that literally doesn't do anything to do with cyber apart from talk to cyber people.
But you still went for it though, didn't you? You still learned the course content, the curriculum.
Yeah, and I to be honest, I was going to do it online, and then that didn't work, and then I had to wait a couple of months and go back and do it. I didn't do as bad as what I thought I was going to do, and that's literally just from talking to people and just sort of picking up on, whenever I'm working certain roles, what the language looks like and what higher managers have told me is important to them. It was all just picking up off that. So the art of like just actually talking to people within the sector, you learn so much just from doing that alone. My CSMP, I'd say I've probably done that mostly off just conversations and a little bit of learning the actual material, because you just start to know what words fit together. So it's actually invaluable going to some of those networking events and just actually getting your face out there, having conversations, and just being really open and honest and humble about the fact that there is things that you don't know. People will happily tell you more about it. Whenever I first started working within cybersecurity recruitment, I blatantly just told people I don't know anything about this. Can you tell me? Can you teach me? And people are more than happy to talk about their job, and they're more than happy to talk about what they do. So it's a really, really good way of networking as well, and reaching out to people is just asking them for some pointers on what they do, what is it that they do. And you will start to find that the actual community is quite engaging, and it is actually a nice sort of area, especially within cyber defense as well. I really like the cyber defense community, because they're all very, very engaging, and they do want more people into the sector and into the industry then as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a barrier just to try and get over your own worries and your own fears at the start. But once you start getting into that mode of doing it, it does actually become a lot easier. And no one expects you to know everything as well. That's the other thing. Just go out and talk to people.
That's really good to hear. Something that we mentioned quite a lot, that we all bricking ourselves in our first cybersecurity jobs because some reason we expected that we had to know everything. And it leads to really kind of toxic culture in cybersecurity sometimes, where particularly in the juniors, I think the more established you get, the less this kind of, you break free of this. But pretending to know everything and pretending that you have to, or feigning that you know stuff because you don't want to say, oh yeah, I don't actually know that. It trips you up in the long run, and it's not conducive to your development, because if you don't ask the questions, don't say when you don't know, then you aren't going to get better. So I think that's some great advice to kind of take people, to have conversations, get them talking about what they do. You will find commonalities of things that you know about that you can draw parallels to, and overall it will improve your understanding. So thanks for those tips. And if talking about the community, the cybersecurity community, we've got some questions from some of ours. So we have what I like to call the fifth member of Empirical Training sitting on the podcast with us, and I'm going to put one up on the screen for those listening at home. I will read it out, but it's really relevant, I think, to the certs point you just made about you've got a few certs you named there. And you also said you studied for some, which I think is sometimes you don't need a cert, you study it, get what you can from it and move on. But yeah, this question is ATS, which is that automatic something screening. I forget the acronym, but is it real when applying for a role, having keywords on your CV? So I believe this is like the first layer of automated. Hey, is this person suitable for us? Do they have the right buzzwords or certs on there? Is that real, or have we all just got AI hysteria at the moment?
Unfortunately, yeah. I don't know how many companies actually use it, but it is unfortunately a real thing. It is a way of screening out a lot of different profiles, because as anybody can see, you look at a SOC analyst role or any cybersecurity role, any role on LinkedIn, and there's going to be 200 applicants within 24 hours. And it's kind of where the system is broken, because there's a lot of people that are just falling through the cracks in that, and it doesn't tell a story. If it's keyword searching, then it leads to bad practices of people just knowing, right, well, I need to have X amount of keywords on my profile, even if I haven't done any of it. So it just leads to a lot of bad practice, but unfortunately it is a real thing. Getting around it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because one of the tips that I've given before, and you can tell me if this is nonsense, is write that you're studying for X or Y cert. So even if you haven't been able to do it yet, had the funds or whatever, it should get you past the first barrier. And if you can talk about it and your knowledge in the interview, is that good advice, or is that going to trip yourself up if you say too buzzword heavy? Is there a balance that good for AI, bad for real hiring managers?
No, I think as long as everything that's coming across is honest, like if you are genuinely studying for it, if you've begun that sort of process, and you can talk a little bit about what you've been learning along the way, yeah, that's actually great advice. The other ways around it is just trying. There's ways obviously of just trying to beat AI in the sense of you just make it loads more personal. So you find the recruiter that's actually looking at the role, and try and connect with them. If it is the talent acquisition, try and connect with them. Try and find the manager, connect with them. It's weird because finding your sort of first role or your entry level roles, or even just trying to find a role for yourself, you kind of have to think like a recruiter. So you do have to try and find your ways around the barriers that are there. So ATS is your barrier. So how do you connect with the hiring manager? How do you find a way to connect with other people within the business so that you can maybe bypass some of those barriers as well? Granted, I know that you can't connect with every single one, and there is an element of you do have to apply over quantity of roles, but just trying to be as personable as you can and trying to find the people that might actually be hiring for the role should help you quite a lot in that sense then as well. But yeah,
you're that bridge as well, aren't you, between the pool of applicants and the company that's hiring for that role? Because I remember when I was at my last job before I left, and I was speaking with you about a role, and we actually went through the interview process. I don't know if you can remember. It was like a good wage at a different company. I think I was going for a management role in the SOC, and they were just starting out, and there was a pool of applicants, but I'm sure that you actually had a word with the company and they were kind of asking you, okay, so out of the pool of candidates that we've currently got, who's your top performer? Who could you recommend? And I remember you saying that you were singing my praises to that company. I went through the process. You sweetened me up anyway. But and I think I ended up getting an offer and I turned it down, didn't I? I think.
Yeah, and I think that bridge of that gap is really important. I think as much as what recruitment gets a really, really bad name, there is a way in which really good recruiters can help you out a lot, and they can help bridge that gap then as well, and basically tell your story a little bit better than what an ATS or what keywords or CVs can really do then as well. That's why I like whenever we're looking at the entry level people is knowing what they've done before they got into cyber, or knowing what they've done before they got into IT, because it's all part of the story. It all shows their tenacity of, right, I was working in this profession, I've completely changed it because I knew that cyber was a place for me. This is what I've done in my spare time alongside working X like 12-hour shifts or whatever. There's so many good stories that you get from people that shows that they are tenacious, and then it's really easy for me to turn around and go, imagine if you had that person who's working 12-hour shifts, then going home and doing cyber hobby stuff and doing bug bountying and stuff like that. Imagine you just had them for 8 hours a day rather than that little period of time where they can just learn little bits about cyber. And it's an easier story to tell in that sense then as well. So yeah, I think working with really good recruiters and working with people that are going to try and put you in front of people, and put you in front of managers and really sing your praises, it is very important as well.
That's great advice. And I think that when we've done some CV reviews for some of our community, one of the things I've always found myself adding that people don't seem to realize is an asset is the fact that you're part of this community. You're actively posting in it. You're sharing ideas, and there are other ones as well, not just our one. But that is really favorable to look upon, right? Even if it's just, hey, I have a Twitter feed where I follow all this. You have your Google alerts, like you mentioned, because if any industry needs somebody who can think on their feet and is constantly developing and moving forward, it's got to be cybersecurity, right? It's just one of the best equalizers, I think, for this business. So, yeah, sorry, James, you have something to say on that? Otherwise, I got a few questions from the community. Otherwise,
no, go ahead.
So I think one that we got early on, I want to just pop up here because we could definitely talk that one for ages. Is about, are there any areas that you're seeing in cybersecurity? Let me pop it on screen. Sorry, it's a ticker one. Any areas of cybersecurity like cloud security or incident response where you're seeing growing demand for entry-level talent? And then beyond that, maybe could we just talk about what is best for entry-level talent if they want to get into cybersecurity? Because Rob and I often talk about how easy it is, not easy, but how many opportunities there are once you're in to branch off in all different directions. But what about getting in? Where should people start?
Yeah, well, I look a lot across cyber defense. So entry level SOC and those types of positions are my kind of bread and butter. It kind of always just comes down to what's been the most interesting to you? What way your mind kind of works? Are you more information security related, where you're more about documentation, or are you more technical? Do you want to go down that route? Do you want to be a hacker? That all of that stuff is really, really good to sort of think about. But ultimately, I don't think it's massively important in your first role. My advice would always be just whatever you can to do, or whatever you can do to get in, is probably going to be the most important thing. You can always branch off, you can always change, but just getting your foot in through the door is super important, I think, at the start. So, like, if there was something which is a like security analyst, where it's a bit more broad, where you can do a little bit of the information security stuff, you can do a little bit of the working with the SIEM tools and a little bit of the technical, and then you can branch off into other areas. That's probably that would be my go-to, is like working as a security analyst within an area where you're not too sure exactly what interests you the most yet. Because it's a little bit broader than being an out-and-out SOC analyst, or being a penetration tester, or looking only at information security then as well. So I'd say if you're unsure, that would be the main area. But if some people I talk to, they're dead set. They want to go right down the SOC route, or they want to be penetration testers, or they want to be GRC analysts and consultants then as well. So yeah, it all depends on what way your brain's sort of ticking, and what is interesting you the most.
Yeah, we've seen a pretty consistent theme over the years of people coming in as a SOC analyst, blue team, technical role, then experience in the industry, experience in that job for one, and then realizing, okay, maybe I want to go off and do architecture, or I want to be a security engineer, or a researcher, or a pen tester. But a lot of people seem to be filtering through that SOC analyst role, and that's the role that we're teaching in our mentorship program, which is it's really useful.
Yes, good thing James agreed with us there, because that's what we've been saying, is SOC analyst is the best way through, and then from there, the many doors open. But like that pen testing is probably the one that comes up the most for people, because it's glamorous, right? I think it's fair to say. But I don't really ever see any first level 1 security penetration tester roles. Same for security researchers. I only see those that occasionally they get an intern who's some brilliant kid they lift out of university, give him 6 months, and then like, okay, we'll have him. But that's only probably 1 in 5 of the interns as well. But in our SOC days, Robbie, I remember looking across, there was one guy who would always be SSH'd into a cloud box on AWS, so he could do hack the box throughout his business day. So, when they had downtime, he was learning by doing his penetration testing stuff. Then another guy went off to do penetration tests for a big car company, right? Shares stories now about how he has to go to BMQ, which is a hardware store for international viewers, with £30 in his pocket, and buy some wire and see if he can hack into a car. He can, by the way. He told me he did. It's an interesting chat. But yeah, no, that's just to kind of emphasize what you said. I'm really aligned with that. Pleased to hear that's where you're thinking. It's tough. I think the question, though, was getting at, having talked to the person who asked it, is it tough out there to get your first job? Is it tougher than maybe when Robbie and I were looking 10 or so years ago? What's the kind of insights from the market for entry-level roles?
Yeah, I do think it's really tough out there at the minute, just because it's so noisy. Like, it's really, really noisy at the minute. There's so many different training platforms. There's so many different sort of people coming through, and all these different sort of like ways of coming through. So there's people coming straight through from uni. There's people coming through from other training platforms. It just seems really, really noisy at the minute. So standing out can be really, really difficult. There's always it always does just go back to just actually being able to be comfortable around telling your story, and being able to show what your story actually does say about you, and what a future employer would be getting if they take that chance on you then as well. Because ultimately that's what they are doing. They're going to be taking that chance on you, but you have to sort of make them feel as comfortable as possible. But definitely, I'd say I wouldn't have been working in recruitment back whenever you guys were starting, but I imagine that there's a lot more noise now than what it was back then. Cyber's been glamorized a lot more, I think. And there's a lot of people going into it for the reasons of just money. And granted, you can get very, very good money in cyber, but it's not right at the start. So whenever I was doing some mentoring, I was always letting people know, like, don't worry about the money at the start. It'll look after itself the more that you get better at the role. But at the start, it's just about getting your foot in through the door, and whenever you get that chance, just really, really running with it.
Yeah, things move super fast in the industry, and companies are betting on people as well. Like you said, you've got to get your story across. You're an individual. There is only one of you. Make sure you tell your story to the best of its ability, and pick out those differentiating factors that make you. And companies want divergent people, high agency. How can you stand out? What things are you doing in your personal life that makes you stand out from everybody else? Because the technical aspect of the role can be taught, but personal morals and ethics and characteristic traits, they can't always be taught. And it is important. It's definitely a big piece of the puzzle that is 100% overlooked at times.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why like Coursera and all those platforms, there's so many courses you can do that give you the knowledge. And so we've kind of focusing on the experience that you get from more hands-on stuff, right? Like it's empirical, it's in the name. Show me, don't just tell me. So doing things like open source tools for monitoring, I think that's much better than certs, even if it might not get you past ATS. Unfortunately, they need to clue up their AIs on that. But shout out quickly to remember Natasha, who said she mentioned that in her interview today that she was a member of this community, and they said that was a really positive, and they were happy to hear that. So that's an example of how she kind of showed that she's standing out beyond the CV. James, you've answered this to some degree, and sorry if I'm going to hammer the point home, but how Robbie touched on the soft skills, that are you a good bloke test, which I think was a very interesting one to raise, not something we really talked about. And you talk about people who want to take chances on people. So how can you show that beyond, once you get that into it, say, you've got a technical level, how can you show the other things? And how can you show that you're someone who deserves being given the trust to kind of take that chance on?
Yeah, really good question.
Good question.
Yeah. To be honest,
I've got some after. I'll go after you though.
To be honest, with the advice that I give people then as well is whenever you're in that interview then as well, I know it's cliche, it gets said all the time, but it is a two-way system. You are sort of making sure that this is going to be the right place for you. Talking about what development looks like, talking about what you can achieve there in 6-12 months. It kind of shows all of these things that you're thinking about the future, and that you're thinking about what your future would look like with that company. And those are the kind of the ways of showing them that you're in there, and you're in there to sort of grow and develop, and that's what you care about. On the other side, just actually showing your personality. It's hard not to be stiff in an interview, because it's just an unnatural process. Really, you're not really used to be sitting down and doing all of this, but trying to get your personality across in some way, talking about what you like to do outside of work, doing all those things, talking about how you sort of interact with other teams in whatever job you do at the minute. All of those soft skills that you've learned elsewhere are really, really important. I've got an amazing sort of case study of someone who, they're probably only in cyber now about coming up to 5 years. Started off as an intern, doing a 1 week's work for an MSSP, and as we speak now, they're the SOC manager over there now, managing a team of 19. And
wow.
All of their skills and all of their business knowledge that they had from their previous work of, they were a brand manager of like a retail company. All of that soft skills and all of that stuff that they knew about around business, that came in so useful, and made them progress. Obviously, from the technical side, they had to do a lot of work in a short amount of time, but all of the soft skills were there, and all of them knowing how to manage people, knowing how to talk to people, meant that they progressed really, really quickly. They're one of my hiring managers now. Actually, I work with them on that aspect and help them build out the team. But like mad progression in a short amount of time, because the soft skills were already there, and then they learned all the technical.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Hell of a story. I've had a few stories like that over the years. We've just working with lads coming in as juniors, and then in the space of 18 months, they've had a double promotion, and they've like tripled their salary. And yeah,
Rob, and tripling the salary crazy money. And we're not saying that everyone's going to be able to do that in that first step. But cybersecurity is really a profitable career, not just a job. This is something that's going to set you up for life. So great to have James on the call today. Ask me anything with the cybersecurity recruiter. Super helpful to see what it is the hiring managers actually look for, what the realities of the job market is right there now, because we hear all the time about the cyber skills gap being so big. There are so many unopened positions, but people are still struggling to get interviews, to get those positions. So I think we just need to equip the candidates a bit better, and also maybe equip the organizations to know who they can take a chance of and who they can develop into the perfect analyst that they need. So if you want to be a cybersecurity analyst, then you can get the mentorship from 4 guys who've done it themselves. We've all come, or 3 of us came from unorthodox backgrounds, either transitioning from a different career path. I myself, law. Robbie was actually on case to be a professional footballer at one point. We found a new career that we hadn't even thought about until we were in our mid-early 20s. And we've loved it. So we want to get more people in by showing you exactly what the important pieces are for you to understand, for you to know, for you to prove your knowledge in cybersecurity so you can get yourself that first job. Because once you get that first job, you are flying if you are a good analyst, which most people in our community are. So if you want to join us, that's school, www.school.com/seccyber. That's our premium community where you can get access to 4 mentors, support with job applications, support with your resume, guidance with many projects that you can do to demonstrate your value to a hiring manager. And if you aren't looking to get into cybersecurity, just listen to the podcast to see what's up. Maybe you yourself own a cybersecurity company. If you want to sponsor this podcast, we can plug that as well. Get in touch with us, team at empiricaltraining.co.uk, and you'll get through to us and we can discuss and see if you've got something that fits the cybersecurity message that we're trying to send. We will not be using any of those energy drinks or anything like that. I'll tell you that for free right now, so don't waste your time. But anyway, thank you very much for taking the time to join us again in this weekly CyberSpace podcast. It's been great to have you. It's always great to have Robbie join me on these calls, or whoever comes from Empirical Training. Really fun. Thanks again to James, our special guest, and hopefully we'll see some more of James. In fact, next week you'll see a part 2 of James, because this conversation really went on. We had so many questions from the community who wanted to know, okay, here's my perception. What's the reality? Does it line up? And James gave some really awesome tips there, stuff that we have talked about before, which is nice to be validated, but also stuff I hadn't really thought about. So hopefully it's going to make everybody increase their chances again, that first cybersecurity role, because that's what it's all about. So thank you very much. My name's Josh, and this has been the CyberSpace podcast by Empirical Training. And that is a wrap.
That's a wrap.